Hey guys, tonight we journey to a place few travelers would have found on a map. And even fewer would have dared to enter without an invite. You're standing at the edge of an ancient city carved from red earth, its walls whispering stories in the hush of twilight. The sky above is the kind of soft purple that makes your eyes heavy. The air is thick with the slow heat of the day melting into night, and there's a faint metallic tang in your nose. Beneath your bare feet, cool, hard-packed earth, maybe laterite, maybe magic. It's hard to tell out here. The walls rise beside you, not stone, not brick, but layers upon layers of rammed earth, so carefully pressed in a line that they seem to hum. Here in the heart of the Edo people's world, the Kingdom of Benin once pulsed with bronze, ritual, and royal decree. You probably wouldn't survive as a casual tourist here a few centuries ago, but tonight, you're just a floating thought drifting past the gates. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where everyone's tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin your slow approach along what used to be one of the most impressive engineered structures on Earth. Yes, seriously, even though no one's throwing that into your high school textbooks, some scholars have ranked the walls and moat systems of Benin as rivaling or even surpassing the Great Wall of China in total volume moved. That's a whole lot of dirt, with nothing but hand tools, woven baskets, and what we can only assume was a staggering number of very tired workers. These were not stone walls shining in the sun like Roman aqueducts. They didn't need to be. The Kingdom of Benin, which rose to prominence between the 11th and 15th centuries, used the material it had in abundance. Laterite rich, red earth, compacted again and again into towering ridges that looped around villages, quartered districts, and most importantly, the sacred palace of the Oba. That's the king, by the way, and not your typical monarch. The Oba was believed to be divine, a living link to the gods. That meant every foot of wall wasn't just construction, it was cosmology, politics, and power baked into the soil. As you trudge through the heat-soaked dust near where those walls once stood, your mind drifts. You try to picture it. Giant loops of ditch and embankment stretching over 15,000 kilometers in total. No, that's not a typo. According to Guinness World Records, which, let's be honest, sometimes stretches things, this system was one of the longest earthworks in the world. But historians still argue whether that figure's legit. Were the measurements exaggerated? Do we count every tiny village ditch? Or just the massive city fortifications? Honestly, by the time you're hearing this, someone's probably written another paper with a completely different number. That's academia, baby. You find yourself brushing a palm against a rough section of wall that's somehow still standing. The surface is pitted, sun-baked, and streaked with darker smudges. Maybe old fire damage, maybe just centuries of storms. The patterns almost look intentional, like the ridges of a fingerprint. A kingdom's fingerprint. Bronze glints nearby. At least you think it's bronze. The light's low and your eyelids are doing that thing where they keep drifting shut, only to snap open again. But let's pretend the bronzes. Ah yes, Benin is famous for them. Intricate plaques, busts, and decorative pieces forged with lost wax casting. And here's the twist. While the rest of the world mostly used bronze for weapons, the Edo people poured theirs into art. Imagine walking through a capital where walls rise high and dry around you, while your eyes catch shimmer after shimmer of ceremonial brass and bronze plaques affixed to palace columns. They weren't just decorative, they told stories. They reminded subjects of the Oba's might, his divine right, and subtly, that he's watching you. Always. You reach a bend in the wall where fireflies blink lazily in and out of view. The air smells faintly of crushed leaves and something metallic, like coins warmed by the sun. A monkey chatters faintly in the trees above. Or maybe it's just a sleepy part of your brain making noise. The deeper you walk, the more the walls seem to breathe. It's a trick of the night air, but part of you believes they're alive. Maybe it's because some locals still whisper that the walls were mixed with more than soil, offerings, charms, even blood. The fringe theory here, that the spirit of the city, called Ehai, is locked into the earth itself, watching over the descendants of the Edo people. There's even an old tale, likely apocryphal, that the first trench for the city was dug by a mythical giant who could clear a mile in a single night, guided by sacred dreams. It's the kind of thing that makes zero sense in daylight, but right now, it feels perfectly logical. As you walk the perimeter of what used to be the royal quarter, the wall curves again, forming a strange, almost serpentine loop. You realize this wasn't a mistake. It was designed like this. The city didn't follow a grid, it followed power. And where the Oba placed his feet, the walls moved accordingly. Even now, centuries later, your every step feels watched. Not in a creepy way. More like a museum security guard who isn't paid enough to care but still sees everything. Behind you, the shadows lengthen. The sun's gone completely now, replaced by a soft violet glow across the horizon. The air is cooler. Your legs heavier. A quiet rhythm begins to echo. Maybe drums from long ago. Maybe your heartbeat. You lean against the wall, and for a second you swear you feel a faint vibration. It's probably nothing, or maybe it's the past, still pulsing under the red dust. You wake, or maybe you never quite fell asleep, at the base of a wall that doesn't look like much to modern eyes. It's a ridge, really. A rise in the earth that curves gently away, flanked by low brush and the occasional curious lizard. But you're not fooled. This wall isn't dead. It's resting. And before you stretch your legs, you glance up at the forest, crowding the horizon. The trees here hum with life. Not a roar, not a whisper. Just the steady pulse of branches swaying, leaves fluttering, unseen insects chanting. And you realize something odd? The city of Benin didn't just fight the forest to exist. It used the forest to design itself. Long before concrete jungles were a thing, Benin's urban planners, if you can call them that, were working with a different blueprint. One drawn in bark and vine, termite mound and twisted root. You picture it. Centuries ago, elders standing knee-deep in forest undergrowth, notching trees and murmuring to the gods about where the next walls would go. See, the forests of what is now southern Nigeria weren't obstacles. They were collaborators. The layout of Benin City followed the contours of nature, wrapping around the thickest groves, tracing the soft edges of streams and termite hills. Roads didn't slice through the landscape. They meandered, glided, curved like dancers around trees that had stood long before the first Oba. It wasn't laziness, it was reverence and practicality. Why chop down a 100-year-old Iroko tree just to make a path straighter? Better to curve the city with the tree at its center. Maybe offer it a cola nut or two, just in case. You scratch at your arm, brushing away what might be a phantom mosquito. These forests, after all, were, and still are, alive with motion. The deeper you walked into Benin in its heyday, the more the jungle wrapped around you like a velvet rope. A slightly damp, vine-covered velvet rope. Now picture a clearing. In the middle, workers with baskets on their heads, scooping up soil for the base of the city's defensive trench. Behind them, the thick green wall of the forest, watching. Maybe judging, definitely plotting. There's a quirky theory that the walls of Benin were designed not in spite of the forest, but because of it. Some fringe historians suggest that the unpredictable jungle terrain gave the kingdom its signature concentric wall system. Villages weren't laid out in neat grids. They formed natural circles or loops around groves, shrines, or ancestral sites. So when the walls came, they simply traced those circles like rings in a tree trunk. It's one of those things modern urban planners would file under organic zoning. But here, it was more like divine landscaping. And it wasn't just about obstacles, it was about materials. The forest supplied the ropes, the palm oil, the firewood for bronze casting, even the pigments for the ceremonial walls. Those deep reds and burnt oranges, all natural, all borrowed from the undergrowth. Still, historians still argue whether Benin's design was truly ecological or just opportunistic. Were they harmonizing with nature? Or just making do with what they had? The answer, as always, is a polite shrug. But let's be real. Any city where a sacred leopard is allowed to walk the royal courtyard probably had some pretty serious respect for nature's authority. You move again, slowly now, down an imagined street. It winds, softly banked, sloping between two ancient embankments. On either side, you hear birds rustling, feathers shaking loose from the branches overhead. Somewhere off in the distance, a child's laughter, timeless, echoing through leaves. The canopy thickens above you. The air grows dense, almost chewy. You breathe in the perfume of crushed leaves, damp bark, and something spicy. Maybe ceremonial incense, maybe your imagination flexing. It occurs to you that the forest didn't just shape Benin's walls, it also shaped its mind, its rituals, its fears. You remember reading that children here were once told not to stray too far into the trees or they'd be swallowed by spirits, or worse, recruited as messengers by the Oba's invisible court. Benin's government had layers. The visible nobility, yes, but also a dense bureaucracy of spirit mediums, royal messengers, and metaphysical enforcers. And many of them? Said to dwell in the woods. You feel the ground slope slightly upward, and there, at the crest, a stone marker. Weathered, covered in moss. Maybe real, maybe not. But you imagine it marks the border of some ancient district. The walls here aren't visible anymore, but you can feel them. Not just physical boundaries, but rules about what could happen inside. Who could speak? Who could even be seen? City planning in Benin wasn't just about streets and drainage. It was spiritual choreography. The wall told you not just where to walk, but how to walk. And sometimes, if you were a visitor from a lesser town, if you could walk at all. You brush aside a low branch, stepping into what used to be a ceremonial grove. In the daylight, it would have looked like a patch of forest. But in the time